Kelley Flanagan is speaking out after ex Peter Weber calls her calculated. Hey guys, welcome back to another shared news from home. We have all the latest on the Kelley and Peter drama. But before we get into it, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any future updates. As always, I'm your host, Fiona Zaring, joined by the wonderful Zachary Reality. Zachary, this has been a Bachelor Nation roller coaster that I honestly don't know if I was even expecting. Have you been keeping up with the drama of this split? Feels like such a shame that these two have gone down such an ugly path. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I've definitely been keeping up of the Kelley and Peter saga. This relationship broke up 5 months ago, and they are still going back and forth. This is still playing out in the press. They're both going on podcasts. Peter is going on his own podcast. They both just really want to share their side of the story. And I want to say that no one cares anymore, but the internet still cares. And I've seen a lot of people online siding with Kelley. And I think I'm leaning towards siding with Kelley as well. I don't think I am siding with Kelley, but let's dive right into this because there is still a lot to discuss as this continues to play out. We're getting more and more information every single podcast.
Yes, literally, you said it best. There's truly so much to unpack because it just keeps coming. In case you guys have missed the recent, recaps of it all, if you're struggling to keep up, Kelley recently stopped by the Chicks in the Office podcast and held nothing back, you guys. She really went there talking about their split. Among the many things she discussed, she said point blank that the relationship ended really badly after they hung out again in New York in February. So that little reunion after the initial split. And at that time, she told Peter to, quote, get the hell out of her life. Now, Zachary, this interview obviously felt a little bit like a turning point. It feels like from that initial breakup post, the announcement on Instagram, things just sort of slowly trickled and painted a uglier and uglier picture, alluding to really how bad it was. And this is the first time she sort of spelled it all out. What were your takeaways from this? I was a little shocked.
I don't think she went on the Chicks in the Office podcast originally to bash Peter. She did originally share her story on Caitlin Bristow's Off the Vine podcast a couple months ago, and we thought that was it. She kind of got her point across and said everything she had to say, but then when she went on the Chicks in the Office podcast, she had more things to say, and I don't think she wanted to bash Peter or throw him under the bus. But obviously, if you're going on a podcast, you're from The Bachelor, people want to know. This is why we tune in. So of course she has to mention it. Of course she has to share what went wrong. And like I said, I don't think she intentionally was trying to bash him. I think she was just sharing her side of the story and being humorous, with the whole Pokemon thing, never wanting to talk to him again, tracking his location on Find My Friends. I think she was just kind of, being humorous about the whole situation. And then Peter was the one, in my opinion, who took it to a whole nother level when he really started calling her disingenuous, calculated, and reaching for a headline. The first sentence he said on his podcast. So Peter took it to another level where Kelley had to defend herself by putting out that YouTube video, which we will get more into.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, here's the thing. Kelley goes on, she does a podcast. There have been so many headlines, so many source quotes, so many quotes from the two of them. And I feel like by the time she got to Chicks in the Office, she was just done. She was just like, I am going to say what I have to say. I'm putting this out there. People still care. I'm still being asked. This is my side of the story. And you're so right. Peter, his response was to not do an interview, to use his own platform, right? To sit down and very formally call her out, like you said, saying he thought it was calculated and that she was, quote, trying to push for a headline, very disingenuous. This to me felt like in a game of, two people trying to one-up each other, going after the other person, it felt like it was really taking it to this no one's going to get the last word, right? Like she went on and said her piece. That wasn't going to be it for him. He needed to say his. And at that point, it's getting to a level of kind of just really being immature. I mean, what were your thoughts by him sitting on his podcast and doing this?
Yeah, you kind of mentioned the back and forth. I think both of them just really want to get the last word. I know Kelley said on her YouTube channel that she doesn't want anyone to paint her in a certain narrative. And then Peter also kind of mentioned that he wanted to provide context for some of the things that Kelley was saying about him. So I think that because they're in the public eye and there are so many people invested in this relationship, they both just really want to respond to everything that each other says about each other so that no one misconstrues them or thinks differently of them. It's definitely hard when you're in the public eye. You have eyes watching you. You don't want people thinking things about you that aren't true or that isn't your truth. So they both just really wanted to get their truth out. And until they both just agree to stay silent about the situation and stop talking about it, it really might go on for another 5 months. I would not be
Right.
surprised, Fiona.
Right. No, I'm totally with you because I mean, we're talking about not having the last word. Obviously, Peter went on his podcast and he did that. Now, here we are unpacking Kelley responding to that, right? She obviously heard what Peter had to say. And she literally made a full blown YouTube video directly calling Peter out. She went through it point by point, you guys, because she is not going to let a false narrative or only his side of the story be what's out there. She said she's going to defend herself if her motives are being questioned and that she thinks Peter is, quote, being a little crazy. So let's dive into this YouTube video, unpack some of these clips because she really did have a lot to say.
Relationship ended very badly, and there was a good reason as to that after Valentine's Day in February. And that is why I said on Chicks in the Office that, you know, I told him to get out of my life, lose my number, which I think is fair because I was drawing a healthy boundary that I needed. My intent behind it, you know, I saw Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, Article 4, and I told my manager, I said, hey, look, tell him to stop because I'm not going to go with a narrative that someone's creating for me. So I decided to do Caitlin Bristow's podcast. Then I see Article 5, Article 6, Article 7, Article 8, you know, just creating the storyline that we're going to be friends in New York and all this stuff. And I finally, again, told my manager, I'm giving you a fair warning, tell him to stop or I will speak, you know, what I believe because I will never let anyone create a narrative for me. So finally I just, you know, the bear was poked. There was a lot of things even going on, being disrespected, going and hanging out with my family friends, posting it everywhere that I was just like, I don't understand. When you end badly with someone, you would think that they would just try to respect you a little bit and just, you know, go their way instead of reaching out to my friends, which it wasn't my friend that he reached out to see how I was doing. It was my astrologer to get his birth chart read. And he asked her for advice in terms of how do I get in contact with her because I know she is not my biggest fan for good reasons.
So, wow. Zachary, I just got to know your thoughts on what she had to say there.
It's so interesting about the press and these articles is that Kelley was kind of saying about this storyline or this narrative. Like, it really just like shows everyone what's real and what's fake because, you know, you go on this reality show, you have a storyline on a reality show, but then there's this whole other storyline that carries into your real life that is told by the press and the headlines, not by you. So I understand why Kelley would want to go on podcast to begin with to tell her side of the story because so many people probably think things about her that aren't true. And she kind of mentioned in the YouTube video about how Peter had many chances to make things right with her, to clear things up, that he was almost painting her in a way that wasn't accurate, that it was just his truth. So of course she needs to share her truth. In regards to her going on her YouTube channel and sharing more of the side of the story that she has to say, I just feel like it's almost unnecessary at this point. I feel like you said what you needed to say on the Chicks in the Office podcast, on Off the Vine, Caitlin Bristow's podcast. We heard Peter's side. There really is no point of this YouTube video. I feel like the internet understands you, Kelley, and agrees with you. If you look under her YouTube video section, all of the comments are in support of Kelley as regards to everywhere. Even on Peter's pages, everyone is supporting Kelley. I would say like 85% of the internet is supporting Kelley. We all have seen what Peter has done for the past 5 girls that he went on his season with. He went from Maddie to Hannah, or to Hannah to Maddie to Kelley to Kelsey. I mean, who is next? For real.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing, like in the early days, if I remember correctly, I mean, it's been such a saga, such a roller coaster at this point. The narrative that was being pushed was sort of that like they're always going to look back on this relationship and be thankful for it. And, what I think is pretty striking is obviously, and we're going to get more into what Kelley had to say, things really did end badly. And there was a moment in time where I feel like the narrative was it just didn't work out. Like we had a lot of respect for each other, but we're just going to go our separate ways. So to really, I feel like, want to correct that narrative and share the truth of the fact that, no, that's not really what happened. She clearly was very upset behind the scenes, and she went on to explain that. She said she felt disrespected post split, and she was upset by the way Peter was reaching out to people in her life, like family, friends, even going so far as to reach out to her astrologer, who he didn't just reach out to as a friend. In her YouTube video, she explains that he basically booked a reading, right? He hired this person, and then during their session, asked for advice on, what he should do, how he should get in contact with Kelley. So really going to extremes that she felt were crossing the line. And she made it very clear on the Chicks in the Office podcast, behind the scenes to him. And now once again in this YouTube video that she's not interested in being in touch, and she's trying to set healthy boundaries for herself. Let's take a look at this next clip because obviously she had more to say.
It sucks because, there's some exes that you could look back on and say you had a great relationship with and you still have respect for them and, you wish them the best. But in my scenario, when something happens that's extremely disrespectful, you have to know your worth and you have to sit there and say, good luck to you. I wish you the best in the future, but I just don't necessarily want you in my life. And that's okay. You don't have to be on great pages with everyone. It sucks because no one likes to be out there and know that they have tension with someone, which I can't stand. But at the same time, I just don't want to be pulled back into that. I don't want that.
So obviously a lot was said there, but she does go on to explain that it sucks to have tension, right? Nobody enjoys being at odds with someone, knowing that there's someone out there walking around who you've got beef with. But she doesn't, quote, want to be pulled back in. And that's why she feels these boundaries, she's setting are important. To me, they feel very firm. Like there is a chance, at least from where I'm sitting, kind of interpreting what she has to say, that if she lets him back in, she knows she's going down a road again that she doesn't deserve. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts? There were some big statements made here.
Yeah. That's honestly really relatable. I think a lot of people can relate to having an ex that they just don't want to get back together with. We've seen relationships play out on reality TV, on The Bachelor, where you're getting back with an ex, you're rekindling things, and sometimes it's really toxic, and you need to set those boundaries so that you don't fall back into that trap. We've all been there. We've all fell into that trap before. So I respect Kelley for setting those boundaries. Why is Peter even reaching out to her? They broke up 4 months ago for the final time in February. Why does he want to reach out to her? Why is he asking her astrologer about her? What does he have to tell her? Is he trying to get back with her? Is he trying to make things right? They both live in New York City now, so it's a pretty big city, but it's possible that they could run into each other. They want to have some type of cordial relationship. They're both a part of Bachelor Nation. But of course, Kelley has to set those healthy boundaries for her. She cannot answer him. If anything, she should just block him. But why is he reaching out? What? Fiona, can you just tell me, why do you think? What is he trying to get out of this?
No, I'm so with you because I have thought about it a lot. And to me, what I'm struggling with is, okay, you could say he's trying to reach out because he wants to make peace, right? He wants to be on better terms. But to me, it feels like if you really want to make peace, then what you should do is respect her, right? Respect that she doesn't want to hear from you. That's what's going to down the line open the door to create that peace, that cordial moment that, okay, there's been enough distance here that we've been able to move on. Now we can be in the same room without it being awkward. I feel like what he really wants to do is have it out, right? There are a lot of headlines. There are a lot of source quotes. There are a lot of things. And if they're not in contact, he's probably looking for some answers on them. I feel like she uses the phrase in this video, the bear was poked, he poked the bear. I think that's kind of what he's trying to do. I don't think he's done. I don't think he's ready for things to be silent. And I understand why Kelley's not looking to continue to go round and round and round, because I have to say, very relatable. Like you said, I certainly wouldn't want to be. And we've been on such a journey from things being totally cordial to totally ugly. So I think keeping that door shut probably makes a lot of sense. In her video, she explains that, she did appreciate some of the extremely kind things he said. Initially, after the split, there were a lot of statements where he said he had, a lot of respect for her, that he'll always cherish their relationship. And of
Mm.
course, she appreciates that. But she did make clear that she thinks she would respect him more today had he not said that she was in it for the headlines. It to her, it really just comes back to the same consistent point, which is she's not going to allow that false narrative to be out there. Addressing, what she said in interviews, she said, "quote I think some of my answers were not liked because it didn't play along with the storyline that was being portrayed. But it's my life too. And I think that I'm never going to let someone create my narrative." So that to me kind of goes back to that there were statements made about how, oh, we're just, going our separate ways. Everything's totally great. She's like, no, that's not my truth. If somebody asks me how the
Mhm.
breakup was, I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, what do you make of what she had to say there?
When they put out their mutual breakup statement on Instagram, everything was good and it was okay. But Kelly makes a good point. This is her story too. She's allowed to tell her truth and her side. And if the breakup was messy and Peter did some things that she did not like, and she's asked about it, what harm is it to just tell how she really feels and tell exactly her side of the story and what happened? She can't just kiss Peter's ass so many months later, especially because they ended up on such bad terms and he totally disrespected her in her words. So, of course, she wants to share her side of the story and not play along with this narrative. Good for her for taking control of her own narrative and her own life. And if Peter started off his podcast differently, like he literally started off his podcast insulting her, calling her disingenuous, calling her calculated. And those are the things that people are going to stick with in the headlines, in the tabloids, in all of these articles. Those are the first things that come up. So Peter knew exactly what he was doing when he called her those names and said those things about her. So even though he said a lot of kind and nice things about her, it doesn't really matter because what he led with is really what is going to stick. So I think Peter
Mhm.
needs to just stop talking about this situation. I don't think he's doing himself any harm. I think the internet has already kind of decided that they are on Team Kelly. And I know that there are Peter stans out there, and everyone is entitled to be a Peter stan. I know we're a little bit more pro Kelly here, but if you support Peter and you love Peter, that's totally fine too. But at the end of the day, these are two people that just have two different truths. Their relationship did not work. And I encourage them both to stop talking about it if they don't want it to continue to play out in the press. But if they do want to make those headlines, as Peter claims, then bring it on. We'll be here for another 5 months, guys.
Yeah, I mean, when you really think about how long it's been, it is crazy. And you're so right. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, it's always going to be easier to put out that initial boring PR statement that says, everything's great. We just don't want to be together anymore, which no one really believes. But eventually people move on. They took a different route. They've been progressively getting more and more open about how ugly it really was behind the scenes at the end there. And people are talking about it 5 months later. So you are so right. The only way this is actually going to go away is if at some point one of them allows the other to have the last word. So, my last question for you here is Kelly's hoping it can all be done now. That's what she said in her video. She said her piece. She wanted to clear a few things up. She feels she has. She's done. Is this going to be it? Or are we going to get a video from Peter clearing up what she said? When do we see this ending? Are either of them going to be willing to let it be done?
I think that this is done. I just don't know how Peter can respond to her recent YouTube video. I don't think she really said anything that would trigger Peter in any way. She really was just clearing things up in a very polite and respectful way. There really is nothing else Peter could possibly say. He told his full side of the story on his Bachelors in the City podcast. He was talking by himself for about 20 to 30 minutes. There really is nothing left for Peter to say. However, I do feel like Peter is going to try and reach out to her again and make things right because all Peter really wanted was to make things cordial, we think. Maybe he was trying to get back together with her. I don't know. But something tells me that these two are going to run into each other again. Bachelor Nation is a very small circle. They're both in New York City. So it is very possible that they'll run into each other again. And this could possibly start back up again. So I do not think that this is the end, Fiona, but I do think it is the
Mhm.
end for right now.
All right, so maybe we'll be getting a little bit of a break, you guys. Honestly, only time will tell. I have to say, started off this video saying I was not expecting to be on this roller coaster. And even after we've unpacked it all, it really just, it breaks my heart. They were such a happy couple for such a long time. And clearly, you guys, it's going to be drama filled for, the near future until something really changes. With all of that being said, that's everything we know right now. That's everything we have for you. Of course, we're going to do our best to keep you updated. But for now, we want to know your thoughts. Are you disappointed that it's come to this? What are your thoughts on Kelley's YouTube video? Let us know down in the comments. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do. Make sure you ring that bell because we will keep you updated on everything happening in Bachelor Nation. As always, I'm your host, Fiona Zaring, joined by the wonderful Zachary Reality. If you want to come say hi, check out our socials. They're on the screen right now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.